and up on Memorial Day. The Orioles out of town all week long. The Ravens back out on the practice fields with OTAs and Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson and all that good stuff. And we'll hear more from that. You'll find that out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault all week long. And each and every week we bring in our pal, Bill Cole. And sometimes we used to sit around at accelerant events and CEO events and talk sports and talk football and talk management and talk leadership. Now we do it on the radio. Cole Roofing, one of our great sponsors here at WNST. And Bill, I have to apologize. I think I've scuffed the Cole Roofing mug because I use it so much. It's gotten a little scraped up here. But I don't think a guy at a roofing company minds a scuffed up mug, right?
Not at all. That just means it's getting used, and I think that's the point of it.
Character is character building. All right, dude, gambling. I'm not a gambler. I've been on the air 27 years. I made a big hullabaloo about a $25 bet I once made in Las Vegas on a bye weekend on a football game. I have not been a pool card guy, although my dad had block pools at the point back in the 1970s, and I remember all that fondly from my childhood. But I've been around a lot of gamblers, right? I've been around, quite frankly, people I think are addicts. I've employed many of them over the course of time, where sports for them was about gambling. Sports for me was always about winning and losing and integrity and civic and honor and Baltimore and Maryland and the home team and the strategy and all that. But boy, the Supreme Court has opened up the proverbial can of worms here, right? I mean, this is going to be the biggest story of the year or any year as it pertains to where the revenue and where the profit come from and how it affects how we view sports in America, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if I've even fully wrapped my head around all the consequences of it. It's definitely intriguing. Are we more susceptible to college athletes getting influenced by gambling now?
Yes, we are. There's no doubt about it. We are more susceptible to that, right? You put a lot of money sitting out there. We're more susceptible to Tim Donaghy. We're more susceptible to Pete Rose being a junkie who gets in too deep and has to start throwing games. I mean, all of that. And then the leagues are going to be, quote, unquote, regulated like Tom Brady and the footballs are regulated. Remember that? And now we're going to bet on it. Now we're going to bring officials in, and we're going to bring guys making minimum wage playing next to guys making $30 million a year. Boy, oh boy. It's a slippery slope. It really is.
Yeah, and I mean, is this all just the leagues wanting a piece of the action and, not being able to get any revenue related to all the gambling that was going on? And the rich getting richer? I don't know whether that's a real thing, but it smells a little bit like that as well.
Well, the teams have never made any money off this, right? So, look, dude, I'm being straight with you. I'm from Dundalk. I've never met a bookie in my life that I know's a bookie. Like, in my life. All the Emerald Tavern nights I had before we had a football team here, I saw guys going out onto the payphone out there, making calls to whomever their guy was. I never had anybody say, hey, Nasty, you want some action? Give me a 50 and, we'll bet against the Royals tonight if you like Splittorf or whatever. I don't know. I've never had a bookie. I've never known. I know there are plenty of them around, and I know I'll be getting emails in and saying, hey, you need a bookie. I got one for you. It's never been my jam, right? And yet, believe me, in my course of time, just employees alone, sponsors, people I know, and the amount of action long before Costa Rica came along, all of that money that's been generated by whatever mafia is in whatever back room, from Parkville to Pigtown, from Dundalk to Pikesville, where any side of town you were on, there's action. There's always been action. I'm not really privy to it in the same way that, I don't know where to find a Coke dealer because I've never bought Coke, right? So, I just don't know where that world lives. But that world's now going to be taken away by Roger Goodell trying to get their 1% and you placing your bet at NFLcom and, quite frankly, stepping behind Section 513, where I've sat for 20 years. 3.5 years from now, you're going to be able to go back there and make a bet the same way I did at Pimlico last week or Laurel 2 weeks ago. And from talking to all the horse racing people last week, I really thought about it a lot over the weekend. Anytime I've ever talked horse racing, we're talking about making money, placing bets, long shots. the trainers bet on and against their horses? Maybe not against, but I don't know. I mean, who knows what that industry's about, right? I mean, horse racing and boxing were the beginning and the genesis of throwing fights, throwing races, doping horses, giving the horse a little sedative before he runs out there so he doesn't, all that stuff that went on. We're now involving human beings here, and lots of money, and the league now going to take the money out of the bookies' hands, right? Literally.
Yeah, I think what makes it interesting is the phone aspect of it, right? So I would have said otherwise, people will remain lazy and bookies will still exist. But now the fact that it's really in your hand and on your phone, yeah, and to your point, the NFLcom concept or the windows in the stadium, it certainly changes. And if you talk to a gambler, they will tell you that betting on a Tuesday night game with, Fresno State against some team, Utah or something, just some game that you would otherwise never watch, all of a sudden this is wildly exciting for them. So I get that. I just really worry about the players. I worry about like mid to low level D1 schools who, these guys have to figure out a way to make money right now, and I think they're the ones that end up causing the problems. So.
Well, I used to go into OT's Fireside Inn down there, Ritchie Highway in Georgia, and I should give them a shout-out, and Peter Martucci, my old pal, because he was one of my first sponsors back in 1992 and 93. And, that was the first place where I went in and saw those little boxes where you would watch the ball game, and you could say, is it going to be a pass or is it going to be a throw? Is it going to be a strike or is it going to be a ball? Is this guy going to get hit or is he not going to get a hit? And you would accrue points through the night where you would get, free appetizers and various things by playing the game. And, I sort of saw that at work, and I don't think it takes 5 minutes in Las Vegas or anywhere like Las Vegas where you see the action, you see the horse racing. And I've talked to people about baseball. And again, I can't get my arms around this, Bill. Like, I don't really know how it's going to work in our state. The goofs that have run our state here that allowed West Virginia and Pennsylvania and Delaware to stick it up our rectum for the better part of 2 decades before they ever brought a slot machine in here. We were always sort of behind the times as a state. But then I think about the baseball side of this, and I often say to my wife, who's going to fix Baltimore? It's not this goof running the city or whatever corrupt police commissioner that they're going to put, in or out or on the radio, wherever these police commissioners reside these days. But there's going to be some Mayor Schaefer that steps up that fixes Baltimore or we'll perish. I mean, same thing with our country. And I think the same thing with baseball. Like, what is going to fix baseball for this baseball team? And I'm thinking to myself, the gambling thing is fascinating because baseball would lend itself much more like horse racing, where there's 10 races a day and they race 6 days a week, or they used to in the old days, where you could get a lot of action. Whereas with football, they don't play much, at all, right? And baseball's always been one of those weird things where you bet on pitchers or not pitchers for games. But I'm starting to think about those days back in Glen Burnie where you could watch an Oriole game and be engaged by whether Brady Anderson was going to take the next pitch or swing, whether the pitch was going to be a strike or a ball, whether the ball was going to be put in play or not, whether it was going to result in a hit, I guess, or getting on base. Maybe there's a 30 or 35% chance of that, right? So there's all of this that could be wagered upon. I see baseball, and I know that cricket wagering, like, I don't know a damn thing about cricket, but everywhere I've ever been where cricket's played, it is a wagering game. It's all about money, and really outside the States, in India, all over Europe, certainly in the South Pacific, where boxing is sort of king and wagering on those sorts of sports. Baseball, to me, stands to win the most from this because they play all day, every night, every pitch, every inning, home run derbies. If there were ways to sort of pari-mutuel that into wagering, maybe baseball could come back. Maybe that would be the one thing that would save baseball.
Well, definitely, you have rotisserie baseball before you had fantasy football, so sure. There's something to that. And, like, you ever played mound ball at the Oriole game? I mean, we're betting on whether the umpire throws the ball back to the pitcher's mound in between the innings, whether the ball stays on the mound or not.
So I pegged you right. You are a degenerate, quite frankly, right? I mean, in the outfield, we would do the same thing in left field. There were 10 of us at the game. We'd say, all right, everybody puts in $1. You get one player on this team, one player on that team. First guy that hits a home run gets the $20 or whatever,
sure,
right? Yeah,
sure.
I mean, $18. We did that.
So, but that's baseball, I think, is your point, right? It's there's a rhythm to the game. There's these little incremental breaks that allow people to come up with games to make it more exciting. Now they can just do it so that Major League Baseball gets a piece of it, I guess. And they can do it from their phone, sitting in their seat. Like, order a hot dog, take the next hitter to hit a home run for $1.
It pays 10 to 1, and if you take if you take Chris Davis, it's 4 to 1. If you take Mark Belanger, it's 60 to 1, right? Or because everything about baseball now is measured, everything is analytic, everything. Luke makes my head spin with ball spin and bat rate and torque rate and arc angle, and Lord knows, right? So all of that nerdery lends itself to the same sort of nerdery that Greg Maddux would take when he would go out to Las Vegas and try to count cards, literally, right?
Right, but the data is where we can pivot a little bit here because...
Well, that's what horse racing was always about. If you understood the form, you had data, or at least what you perceived to be data, right?
Right, but the politicians, whether they get involved here, I mean, you got to assume the Supreme Court was just looking at it as a state versus federal ruling.
Yeah, now it's your problem. Now you guys go figure it out, all 50 of you.
Yeah, but as soon as we see the politicians get in, I think that there's an element of data gathering here that people will want to further paint the picture of all the people in the world, right? So they're already gathering data on every website we visit and all our locations, like, because our phone tells them where we've gone and where we go and all the purchases you make. And now this is just one more piece to the pie of painting the big data picture of all the people in the country. And I don't want to take us off onto some crazy conspiracy, but again,
you're allowed. It's talk radio. I mean, you can find anything on the AM band. Trust me.
No, just there's always motivation for this. So what is the motivation that we can't really see? And
now we're throwing money on top of this, on top of just going out and earning a salary. That if you're an official, if you're a player, if you're a coach, if you're an unpaid athlete, which I think you're pointing out, boy, this is. Regulating this, the NFL couldn't regulate pounds of pressure inside of a football. They can't regulate what is a catch. They can't regulate what is pass interference. The hockey officials the other night missing the Orloff call that may cost the Caps a chance at a Stanley Cup. The things that happen in these games and whether the ball went over the upright that was good or not good. And I can only imagine how many bad beats every degenerate gambler's already had. We made an airtime of that here back in the 90s when we had degenerate gamblers around, and all they did was talk about the night that this fix was in, and Bubba Smith threw that, and Super Bowl III was fixed. And it's never going to end when you start putting billions of dollars, literally, that the NFL is going to make $500 million in gambling just off the Super Bowl alone that never existed before, because it's going to be on an app and you're going to be able to do all that stuff you used to be able to do in Las Vegas through NFLcom. That's mind-blowing to me. It really is.
Right. Okay, but so let's figure there's an incremental increase in gambling, right, because it's easier now and it's legal. Some people just didn't do it because it wasn't legal. But there's an incremental increase. The real difference, or what the consequences that you want to try and understand are, when the money shifts from this portion of the people to the big corporate entities and the leagues themselves, what does that say? Because are they even going to care whether we show up at the stadiums anymore? Like, is it a big deal if there's no fans? Like, the Orioles played a game like that. Like, who cares? Because it's really a business. So they're selling the TV rights, and they're selling the gambling.
Yeah, who cares what it looks like, right?
Yeah, or well, why? I mean, do they really care how many beers they sell? Because they just replaced the beers with gambling.
How many companies in this country, create food that kills us, create products that kill us? I mean, there's no ethical or, inherent integrity in any of this. I mean, if the Orioles could make another $60 million a year off people gambling off of baseball, which they clearly can, right? I mean, that money's just sitting there for all of these sports franchises. I mean, I saw Leones and Cuban last week licking their chops, sending out press releases saying they may have doubled the value of their properties in one day. And the fact that 2,400 people showed up at the game, what do they care? What do they care who's watching American Idol as long as they're making money off of it?
Well, and how does the whole professional sports to me is all a marketing play anyway, right? It's all about the advertising dollars and people being able to influence purchasing decisions. So how do you weave gambling into a brand of, this is not the best, but we can pick a good one, but like Coca-Cola, right? Like, do you want Coca-Cola on the branding that says, hey, come gamble your mortgage, and, if you win, it's cool, but if not, you got real problems. But, hey, don't forget to drink a Coke along the way.
And by the way, if you have a problem, don't gamble. 800.
Right.
Yeah, right, exactly. That's what
I mean, integrity in sports is part of the reason why Ford puts their trucks on there and Coke and, it's a natural pastime or national pastime or, I don't know.
Or it's not. When they take a knee, everybody runs in the other direction too, right?
Yeah, that's true.
Well, that happened too.
True.
So, Bill Cole is here, Cole Roofing and Pfister Energy. We argue about sports every single week. We do it here. You can find him at Cole Roofing as well as at Pfister Energy, talking sports and obviously hockey on the mind, horse racing on the mind. We're trying to push a Triple Crown bus up to Belmont. That's going to be a great day to see Justify on June 9th. You can throw me an email on that as well. We got the NBA Finals looming, the Stanley Cup Finals looming, and yet the Orioles sort of slumber and lumber along. And the Ravens, who won't do anything for 5 months, will become the story this week. This Flacco-Lamar Jackson workplace issue is something unique, isn't it? You don't have that sort of thing at Cole Roofing, or I didn't have that at WNST, that's for sure.
No, I'm curious. Like, I've had a couple people tell me, that Lamar is an outspoken person because I think he's in a good position to sit and learn from Joe and not feel a lot of pressure to get in there. And Joe should be able to go out and have a good season. And I think everyone would be totally okay with that and excited. But my understanding is maybe this guy isn't the most quietest guy in the clubhouse. And I think that will sort of create the concern for everybody, because if he just sits there and he plays the good soldier, then everybody can get on Flacco and he can not feel added pressure. But if this guy's going to be on TV running his yapper, that's going to be a problem.
Tell everybody what's going on at Cole Roofing and Pfister Energy. You usually have some words of wisdom, and certainly as we now get into the hot season, I've always believed that those 110-degree days, when I would see the little cracks in the cement and I would see the black tar there sort of, feather up and get that sort of oily slime, I'm figuring some things like that are probably happening on roofs around here when it gets really, really chippy out there, right?
Yeah, no, it's getting to be a good time. I always encourage people to think of our roofers when it's 100 degrees out, because that means it's 130 on the roof and they're putting down 500-degree asphalt. So it's an honest day's living. But I think the only message today is to continue to encourage people to think of that roof as a platform to do other things, right? So we have the ability to keep your building watertight for 25 beyond years. Why don't we use that space for something else that can conceivably generate revenue for you or avoid costs in other ways, everything from vegetated roofs and putting plants up there and creating a little workspace for your people, or, we're building solar solar arrays up on the roofs and generating electricity, and that's also a nice way to use that roof space.
You know what's fascinating is I live up high down in the city, and I think everybody has seen that giant building that's going to be the biggest building in the city pop up literally out my window. My cat has watched it blossom, and about the 8th floor of the roof there where the parking garage ends and the actual structure begins. Boy, man, they got a pool going on down there, and they've got plants and green space and trees and gazebos, and I've seen it kind of all come together. I'm seeing the tiling come in now, and I just think to myself, what an incredible – I don't think we thought about the world in that way 30 years ago, right? Like, I used to see some movies of rooftop spaces in New York where there were plants and balconies and stuff, but, boy, that didn't exist in our city, right? I mean, the use of roofs – in that way, and I guess maybe even with pool spaces, the pool on the roof, we always joked about that at Dundalk High School. It didn't exist, although they might have one now. It's a pretty nice place that they got over there. But the way we think of roofs, when did that change? I mean, your family's been in the roofing business 100 years. Your grandfather certainly didn't think in that way, right?
Well, what's really funny is actually if you go back to the turn of the century, playing on rooftops was something that everyone did. I mean, in the summertime, it was very hot. There was no air conditioning. And being at the street level was wildly unsafe because of horses and buggies and people and all that. So a lot of people would go up on their roofs and created that space and played up there, hung out up there in the evenings. So we actually are going back to something that we used to do a long time ago. But more recently, I think 2004, we put our first significant vegetated roof up on the Natty Bow Tower in downtown Baltimore.
Well,
so
okay.
That was really the beginning of it for us. And
that's not that long ago, really, right? So it's
not.
I live in a building that was built in 1987, and there's a little park space that separates my hotel from where I live and whatnot, but it's not thought of in the same way that it would be 30 years later, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think that was sort of the resurgence, and that had a lot to do with regulations surrounding stormwater runoff and other things that we were trying to do to keep the bay clean and other good initiatives that were happening. But to your point, I mean, they have had hotels and parking garages with rooftop decks for a long time. It just wasn't something that was getting specified on new projects. And then in 2004, it seemed to come to life. And the invention of LEED certification and building these energy-efficient green buildings and all that plays into all that as well.
By the way, I saw the damnedest thing in London. When I went over there in the summer last year to plan my September trip, I said to a gal, a young person there, I said, where's a big club around here, a big room where I could, host a party? And she said, well, take the tube over to this stop and go. Now, you're going to walk in. It's going to look like a mall or a center, and then take the elevator to the rooftop space. And damn if I didn't do that. My wife and I were with Niels. Pardon me, and it was in July, and it was sunset 6 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, and we went up, and it was literally like the Towsontown Mall, if you can picture the roof of the parking garage there, that they had, instead of using for parking, they turned it into a bar. So like up there was the biggest carnival. There were games, there were open bars, there was a disco. If you think Bohager's back in the day of like an open lot where there were beer tub girls in one corner and Johnny Boys in the other, but it was all on a parking garage on a roof. And apparently they do it on Friday and Saturday nights, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday night, just a weekend happy hour thing. But this is literally a parking lot. Nothing fancy, nothing at all, that they just repurpose into some sort of a carnival bar space. And I thought to myself, well, that's pretty brilliant if you own the entertainment center and you don't really have a bar and you don't really have any expense put in other than, the parking, the big cement things where you park the car for the fenders. And we partied on the rooftop of a parking area, and there were 600 people all up there, drinking and dancing to Bob Marley songs. And I thought, I've never seen that one in America. I mean, that's going to catch on over here at some point.
Well, we're going to be forced to do it because we're going to have all this extra parking space once the cars become autonomous and none of us buy them anymore, and they just pick us up and drop us off and move around the whole time and not need to park. we're going to have all these empty parking spaces. So
yeah, see, I would have laughed at you to have said that 5 years ago, like George Jetson. Now that I know, when I'm 70, I'm not going to have to worry about driving because a car's going to do that for me. And we're going to figure out a system here, I hope. But that is weird, right? I mean, how much this changes.
It does. Currently, we're using the top deck of parking garages to build solar canopies, and that's a really nice way for parking garage people to add another stream of revenue to their parking garage, just generate power off that top deck. But, yeah, I think it would be cool to, underneath of that, set up a tiki bar and, have a little bazaar-type deal, or maybe that's where we put the farmers market and things like that. So I think we're going to have some space available to do that.
I like that they use the farmers market down in the city underneath the bridge where homeless people sleep the rest of the week. So we go over there on Sundays and buy our lettuce and our strawberries. Bill Cole is here, Cole Roofing and Pfister Energy. Tell everybody what you do and how to find you, other than talking about gambling and sports and rooftop spaces and all the craziness we've been discussing here this week, which has been fun, by the way.
Sure. Cole Roofing, been around. Next year's our 100th anniversary. The web address is coleroofing.com. The phone number is 410-242-0600. Somebody's always there, and we love to help people, so please call us. What is
a 100th anniversary? Is that like a gold, platinum? So I don't, like the first year you give paper when you're married, right? And then what is a 100-year anniversary? Is there?
Yeah, I don't know. Nobody's telling me that. I think it involves saying a whole lot of thank yous because it's really hard.
I got it right here. I Googled it. You ready? What do you call a 100th birthday? You call it a platinum jubilee.
Oh, the platinum jubilee.
The 75th year is the diamond jubilee. This is according to the internet, okay? I mean, I'm not making this up.
It has to be right, then. It has to be right.
So what you want to do is a platinum jubilee next year.
All right. Well, that's what I'll be working on then.
That sounds very Cole Roofing, Platinum Jubilee, doesn't it?
Right.
Cole Roofing and Bill Cole, my pal. You can find him at coleroofing.com. We talk about all their commercial and corporate roof spaces and all the cool stuff they do. And we talk about gambling and baseball and football and hockey and basketball and horse racing and anything else. Speaking of horse racing, I'm trying to push a Belmont bus. If you have interest in going to see Justify, throw me a note. I'm trying to figure that out here in the early part of the week. I'm excited about doing it. I want to do it. I just need you to be excited about doing it. Nasty at WNST.net. Plenty of people excited about the Ray Lewis trip, the Nashville trip with the Jack Daniels Distillery and my 50th birthday, as well as the Charlotte trip. They're all on sale. Trying to work out Belmont. Trying to work out all sorts of stuff around here during a fractured week and a holiday week, and the Capitals and the NBA and the LeBrons and the Golden States and the Orioles doing their thing out in Chicago this week and then in Tampa Bay, as well as the Ravens getting on the field. We got the lacrosse Final Four. Go Maryland, because Hopkins and Loyola couldn't get it done last weekend, but at least somebody local's in there. So good luck to the Terps as they venture off to the land of Belichick. Nasty at WNST.net finds me. I am always out in the Toyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. The morning newspaper ships directly to your email inbox. It's all brought to you by Planet Fitness at PlanetFitness.com. Speaking of horse racing, the Pimlico entries in the morning newspaper each and every day. All brought to you by the Maryland Jockey Club. They did a nice job of running through the mud last week. Still got 134,000 out there for the big race on Saturday. I watched the race at Michael's Cafe. Man, what an operation they got up at Michael's Cafe. I mean, steak and cake. I mean, you're pulling out the oysters, the shrimp, crab cakes were to die for. Fantastic night. Beautiful bar. They got the outdoor music now in the outdoor lounge area. You can sit outside, listen to some music, have a beverage, watch the ball game. Michael's Cafe in Timonium York and Timonium Roads appreciate their sponsorship and the Dellis family out there who treated us great on Saturday night for Game 5 of the Caps. Let's see. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live, and whenever Manny Machado is traded, you'll get it first on the WNST text service. That's all brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis will be here on Thursday, driving you home from 3 until 5. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports